Did you know that over the last 550 years, hundreds of countries have disappeared from the map? That's right, entire nations once bustling with culture and history have just vanished. One day you're a proud citizen of the Republic of Ragusa and the next, you're scratching your head asking, where did my country go? But don't think this is ancient history. Our modern world map is still a work in progress. Thanks to the ever-spinning wheel of geopolitical drama, countries are constantly teetering on the edge. Some get new names, some split into fragments, and others, they lose it all. Sovereignty, identity, even their spot on the map. It's like a game of musical chairs, but with entire nations at stake. Today, we're diving into the unsettling realities of nations on the brink of collapse. From political instability and spiraling unemployment to the devastating impacts of terrorism, climate disasters, and humanitarian crises, these factors are reshaping borders and shaking up the global map as we know it. So join us as we uncover the stories of these fragile nations, and why the world map might need another redrawing sooner than you think. First up on our list of countries teetering on the edge is Ethiopia. Now, when you think of Ethiopia, you might picture stunning landscapes, ancient history, and coffee so good it could make even the most exhausted night owl dance the cha-cha. But, unfortunately, beneath that beauty lies a nation grappling with chaos that could shake its very borders. Over the last 50 years, Ethiopia has been through enough political drama to make Game of Thrones look like a sitcom. The government's power has shifted towards Oromo political elites, but with that shift came a recipe for disaster, ethnic hostility, flawed institutions, corruption, and a government that's losing its grip on borders and territories. And if that wasn't enough, the government is basically in a cage match with the Amhara Fano freedom fighters. As we speak, these fighters have claimed about 90% of the territories in the Amhara and Oromia regions. They've even got their eyes on Addis Ababa, the capital. Imagine your local militia trying to take over Washington, D.C. Wild, right? All of this started less than a year after the Tigray conflict ended. Apparently, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy thought it'd be a good idea to disarm the Amhara special forces and militias. Spoiler alert, it didn't go over well. What followed were political massacres, mass arrests, and enough chaos to make you wonder if anyone's actually in charge. And let's not forget the economy. Ethiopia's debt sits at a casual $16 billion. They're using the G20's Common Framework Program for debt relief, but here's the catch. Political instability and violence are making recovery a pipe dream. And then there's the humanitarian crisis. Food shortages, mass displacements, and loss of life have left millions in a dire state. Ethiopia is like a ship in the middle of a storm, with leaks springing up faster than the crew can patch them. So what happens in Ethiopia doesn't just stay in Ethiopia. This turmoil ripples through neighboring states and could reshape the Horn of Africa as we know it. Next on our whirlwind tour of shaky borders and unstable regimes, Belarus. Now, if you thought Belarus was just Russia's quieter cousin who likes to keep to itself, think again. This small, landlocked nation is tangled in a geopolitical mess so tight, Houdini would have tapped out. Let's rewind to 2020. Belarusians hit the streets en masse, protesting a highly questionable election that saw Alexander Lukashenko cling to power like a cat with a laser pointer. The protests were massive. People wanted change, freedom, democracy, all the usual demands of a population fed up with authoritarian rule. But Lukashenko wasn't having it. With a little help from his pal Putin, and by little I mean tanks and political backing, he crushed the protests with a brutality that would make history books wince. And just when you thought Belarus couldn't get more involved, 2022 rolls around. Russia invades Ukraine. And guess who lets them use their backyard as a launch pad? Yep, Belarus. That move pretty much wiped neutral mediator off their diplomatic resume. At the UN, Belarus doubled down, being one of only 5 countries to vote against condemning the invasion. The other 4? Let's just say it was a club you wouldn't want to join. Of course, cozying up to Russia has its perks. And pitfalls. Western nations weren't thrilled and hit Belarus with sanctions tougher than a well-done steak. The EU and the US cut them out of international trade, slapped financial restrictions, and even booted them off the SWIFT financial network. Basically, Belarus became that one kid no one wants to sit with at lunch. Now, here's the kicker. While Belarus's economy didn't completely collapse, it even grew slightly in 2023, its trade with Russia has skyrocketed. Nearly 70% of Belarusian exports are tied to Russia. Add in goods transported via Russian ports and trains, and that number climbs to a staggering 90%. At this point, Belarus's economy is less independent nation and more Russian side hustle. This dependency is a double-edged sword. Sure, it's keeping the lights on, but it also means Belarus's fate is practically tethered to Russia's, and by extension, the outcome of the war in Ukraine. So, will Belarus hold its borders, or is it just a chess piece in Russia's long game? Only time will tell. What do you think is next for Belarus? Welcome to Tunisia, home of stunning Mediterranean beaches, ancient ruins like Carthage, and, well, let's just say some pretty intense political drama. If you thought this North African gem was all sunshine and couscous, buckle up. Tunisia's been on a roller coaster ride since it kicked off the Arab Spring back in 2011. Remember the Arab Spring? Tunisia led the charge, overthrowing a 23-year dictatorship and embarking on a bold journey toward democracy. It was inspiring, chaotic, and full of hope. Fast forward to 2021, and things took another dramatic turn. President Kais Saied decided he wasn't into sharing power and pulled a political reverse. He sacked the prime minister, suspended parliament, and basically said, "I'll take it from here." Some called it a coup, others, a much-needed reset. Either way, the streets lit up with celebrations, because who doesn't love a little political drama? But here's where the party ended. Tunisia's economy started to crumble under the weight of unsustainable policies. Think massive deficits, skyrocketing public debt, and inflation that refuses to quit. Said's refusal to work with the IMF? Bold move, but it's left Tunisia strapped for cash and relying on domestic borrowing. Imagine maxing out your credit cards, refusing a loan from the bank, and asking your roommate to cover the rent every month. That's basically Tunisia right now. Public debt is over 80% of GDP, and debt servicing alone eats up nearly 15%. Meanwhile, youth unemployment is at a staggering 39%. If you're a university graduate, your chances of landing a job are only slightly better, about 76%. Yikes. And it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. These economic woes are hitting everyday Tunisians hard. Food, medicine, often in short supply. It's a crisis that's brewing resentment and putting Tunisia at risk of, well, falling off the map. The bottom line? Tunisia's got to make some serious changes, like yesterday. Drastic spending cuts, smarter economic policies, and maybe, just maybe, a willingness to chat with the IMF. Tunisia's story is far from over. Will it pull through and reclaim its spot as a beacon of hope in the region, or is it heading for the history books as a cautionary tale? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Venezuela, the land of Angel Falls, endless oil reserves, and arepas so good they should come with a warning label. Once the wealthiest nation in Latin America, Venezuela was the place to be. But now, it's less Caribbean paradise and more economic cautionary tale. Let's rewind a bit. Back in 1998, Hugo Chavez swept into power with promises of a brighter, more equal future. Fast forward 2 decades and Venezuela has gone full-on dystopian. I'm talking power outages, empty ATMs, and inflation so bad it makes monopoly money look like a solid investment. Need a loaf of bread? That'll be 15 million bolivars. Oh wait, the ATMs are empty? Guess you're bartering with your neighbor for half a mango instead. And let's not forget the political chaos. Nicolas Maduro clings to power like it's the last empanada at a family barbecue. Meanwhile, opposition leader Juan Guaido is out here rallying massive protests, trying to restore some semblance of democracy. The result? Streets filled with desperate citizens and military forces cracking down with deadly force. The humanitarian crisis is staggering. Food and medicine shipments from the US and other countries are blocked at the border, all while Venezuelans go hungry and malaria makes a grim comeback. And here's the kicker. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. But thanks to corruption, mismanagement, and debt piled higher than the Andes, the country's economy has crumbled. Oil profits, gone. Prosperity, a distant memory. What was once Latin America's most prosperous nation is now fighting for survival. People are starving, their currency is worthless, and political turmoil has left any hope of democratic elections in shambles. But here's the thing. Venezuela's story isn't over. The people's resilience is unmatched, and if the right changes happen, political reform, economic stability, and international aid, this nation could bounce back. Will it be easy? Not even close. But if any country can rewrite its fate, it's Venezuela. Let's hope this beautiful country finds its way back onto the world stage for all the right reasons. What do you think? Is there hope for Venezuela, or is the road ahead just too steep? Pakistan, home to breathtaking landscapes, rich culture, and a history as complex as its mountain ranges. But today, this nation faces a crossroads with political turmoil and economic instability threatening its future. From military rule to democratic experiments and now creeping authoritarianism, Pakistan's journey has been anything but smooth, and things are only getting more intense. Let's start with the big elephant, or should I say, general, in the room. For most of its history, Pakistan has been run by military dictators. Civilian governments have only gotten a turn when the military got so unpopular it had no choice but to step aside. But since 2008, Pakistan has had its longest spell of civilian control. Sounds like progress, right? Wrong. Instead of marching forward, democracy in Pakistan seems to be moonwalking, backwards. Yup, they've gone from hybrid democracy to authoritarian regime. If this was a video game, Pakistan just unlocked the zero electoral credibility achievement. And then there's the crackdown on dissent, peaceful movements like the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, which champions rights for ethnic Pashtuns, have been banned. Meanwhile, the country is grappling with terrorist attacks orchestrated by Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, TTP. Pro tip: harboring the Taliban and hoping for a peaceful neighbor is like raising a pet tiger and expecting it to purr. On the financial front, Pakistan is a pro at something nobody wants to brag about: IMF bailouts. They're on their 25th bailout program. Yes, 25th. It's like a bad Netflix series that refuses to end. Reforms like privatizing state enterprises and raising taxes have been introduced, but they're so unpopular that past governments avoided them like the plague. And let's talk debt. Pakistan's external debt servicing for the next year is $29 billion, nearly half its expected dollar income. That's like making $100 and owing $45 to credit card companies. It's not sustainable. If that wasn't bad enough, the catastrophic 2022 floods brought the country to its knees. Nearly 1,700 lives lost, over 2 million homes destroyed, and millions still reliant on humanitarian aid. It's a crisis of biblical proportions, and the economy, already on life support, took another massive hit. COVID-19, global inflation, and poor governance have left Pakistan's growth stalling, poverty rising, and human development outcomes lower than countries with far less wealth. And let's not even start on their low labor productivity. Spoiler, it's among the worst in the world, but all is not lost. Pakistan has immense potential, its people are resilient, its geography is strategic, and its culture is rich. But the country needs urgent reforms, smarter policies, and frankly, a little less drama to avoid becoming a cautionary tale on the world stage. What do you think? Can Pakistan turn things around, or is it destined for more turmoil? And there you have it. These are just some of the countries on the brink of major change, or, dare we say, collapse. But what do you think? Are these nations destined for a full reset, or will they find a way to pull back from the edge? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take. Are you keeping an eye on any other countries that might make the map makers work overtime? Or do you have your own theories on how the geopolitical landscape might shift? Let's get the conversation going. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world's most fragile nations, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got plenty more content coming your way, from global rankings and travel tips to the best places to retire or visit. And remember, the world is constantly changing, so stick with us as we navigate these fascinating shifts together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.